Hello, I'm Carol Dean, and I've produced and financed many films. I'm teaching a producing class where you can learn financing, acquiring rights, hiring crews, locations, scheduling, post-production, and a lot more. So please consider joining us. People often ask me, what does it mean when you say develop your project? Because we have to tell a lot of filmmakers that when they apply for the Roy Dean Grant. And the answer is that this is the time, development time, is that it takes to complete your idea for your project. This is when you have a final script for your short or your feature and an outline for your story for a documentary. This development process covers the writing and rewriting of the script, as well as the names of the people that you want to interview for your documentary. And it also covers the legal steps that you must go through to purchase or acquire the underlying material, like releases and contracts, because you need those from everyone you work with. And this is where you start finalizing your financing, because once you get through this, you go into the next phase, which is pre-production. So this process of taking an idea from its original concept to the final distribution can be from 2 to 5 years. And it is really important to remember this when you set out to make a film, because you need to be totally committed. Personally, I think that you need to know where you want to be in the next 3 years. I believe it's important to plan your future in this industry. And by doing this, you'll be able to look at things that are offered to you and make a decision if it fits your goals or not. And that's how you learn to say no to someone who's offering you something, because you only want to take on projects and people who will take you to the future you want. Now, people often ask, what does a producer do? And to clarify this, Maureen Ryan, in her book, Producer to Producer, starts with definitions of the various producers and what they do. Executive producer is the person who brings the financing or makes a significant contribution to the development of the literary property. The producer is the person who puts together the various elements for the project. This would be purchasing rights to the underlying material, coming up with the idea for the project, hiring the screenwriter or writing the proposal, attaching actors, creating and scheduling interviews for documentaries, hiring key department heads, overseeing the production and post-production, and bringing in financing. Now, that's a lot of work for one person, and that's why it's going to take us 26 classes to cover everything a producer does. A co-producer is the person who's responsible for the logistics of the production of the film or a particular aspect of the film. The line producer is the one who's responsible for the logistics of the production from pre-production through completion. The associate producer is the person responsible for one or more producing functions delegated by the producer or the co-producer. So one of the first things you do is rights acquisition. You need to get the rights to your material, even if it's your own idea. And our guest speaker today is the brilliant writer, director, producer, recently retired professor of screenwriting and media theory and criticism at California State University, Northridge, where she taught one of her brilliant books, Great Adaptations, Screenwriting and Global Storytelling. Alexis Krasilovsky.
Well, thank you for having me on this morning's Zoom. It's such an honor to be sharing the screen today with the person who founded and runs From the Heart Productions, which has made so many producers and directors' visions come to fruition. I'm not usually a morning person. It's 9 a.m. in Los Angeles, but I'm hopeful that I can help pass the torch to a new generation of filmmakers and explain how to start responsibly and run with it.
Wonderful. In your introduction to Great Adaptations, you say that this book will focus on the writing process. It's not just about adapting novels or nonfiction to film, however, because writers also work in television. We write webisodes and novelizations, and for our source materials, we look at short stories, comic strips, biographies, plays, and a variety of other media, sometimes more than one at a time. So for my first question, in your book, Great Adaptations, Chapter 2, Career Issues, Writers and Producers' Standpoints, you say that it all starts with rights acquisition. So please tell us your personal experience in negotiating an option agreement.
Well, in my own personal experience, I've been adapting my own material as a nonfiction and fiction writer, as well as a poet. So the book that I wrote, Women Behind the Camera, Conversations with Camera Women, became the documentary, Women Behind the Camera, which led to another book that I co-authored called Shooting Women Behind the Camera Around the World, and then a shorter version of the film, Shooting Women, which is now streaming on the Criterion channel. And my 2021 short film called The Parking Lot of Dreams is based on some of the poems in my recent book, Watermelon Linguistics. In my screenwriting classes at Cal State Northridge, my students were writing for a grade, not necessarily for production, but I urged them to either write a film or television adaptation that was based on material in the public domain, generally 75 years after the death of the author. We'll get to more details about that later, and Robert can go into more depth about that if you like. But at least see if the rights are available to you if you hope to sell your script and not just treat it as a learning experience. Unless you're negotiating for permission to adapt a book that's on the bestseller list, you may not need 6 figures for an option. Some authors are so grateful for exposure that they'll accept a token payment. I had 2 students in different years who wrote A++ screenplays based on the novel Push by Sapphire, but they hadn't approached the author or the publishing company for an option. And so they weren't able to make any traction in Hollywood as unknown writers. The Academy Award for Best Adaptation for the movie Precious, based on Push, went to Jeffrey Fletcher. I'm happy for him, but I'm sorry for my students. Although others like Minoti Vaishnav, who's writing on the CBS primetime show True Lies, have been much more successful. But it really, you can't just write and be creative. You've got to know some of the business and legal aspects of all this when you start out.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. That's really good advice. All right, well, let's go into the checklist you wrote entitled Negotiator's Checklist of Film Adaptations.
Okay, so let's go through these 6 points quickly, but if I speak too fast, please let me know to slow down. I wrote in consultation with Michael Donaldson, Esquire, who is the author of the book called Clearance and Copyright. But I warmly welcome Robert Siegel, Esquire, to chime in with any further insights. We're so lucky to have you here with us today, Robert. Point number 1, is the basic story under copyright? Is the basic material 75 years old or older if, catch-22, if the copyright date is stated as sometime before 1978? Or is it 50 years from the author's death date if the material was copyrighted after 1978? So for those of you who are working with material that's not published in the US, however, it's usually 70 years, not 50 years after death. So it's worth checking this out with a fine-tuned comb, especially for different regions of the world, because point number 2, the question, who owns the rights, is very basic, but it's crucial. In my case, I just learned last week, after spending thousands of dollars on legal fees to option a novel that I really loved, that I could really see as a limited TV series, I learned that the deceased author's daughter, in going through her mother's papers, that her mother, the novelist, had given the copyright over to her publisher. The daughter didn't even know this. Even and the novel showed the copyright owner as the mother's name. And it would have cost me a lot more money to straighten out this entanglement with a lawyer and negotiate with the publisher instead of the daughter, as I had been doing for months, in addition to what I promised to pay the daughter for the right to adapt her mother's novel. And I'm not a millionaire, so I had to stop the option process, which should have been relatively simple, but at least I'm not going to be in development hell for the next 2-3 years. So Carol's advice about think about where you want to be in 3 years is just priceless advice. Thank you, Carol.